require a mind, but you said a metaphysical concept would still exist even without human minds. Please answer that question.
That literally is on the basis of a human mind, which is what I'm saying.
You said take them away, the law of non-contradiction is still true.
What we're talking about is basically describing how we view it subjectively. That's what you're not understanding. What we're talking about, basically, we're describing something subjective. We're describing a subjective concept, and I'm saying it's subjective, and you're saying, no, it's objective. That's what you're not understanding.
Do you agree the description of a thing is different than the thing itself?
You say the description of a thing is different than the thing itself.
Yeah, is there a distinction between the two?
We're talking about a metaphysical concept on where we describe things. It's just like if I say the word grass, that doesn't mean it's physical grass. I'm merely saying something is fundamentally different. Okay, and so when you're saying, "Oh, can the universe know this and exist?" You're making a claim, and that you're not even understanding what you're saying. You know,
I am. So let's rewind, train. Let's slow down, okay?
No, but regardless, you
let's wait.
You said he's timeless and not timeless.
Bro, please don't pivot, okay? Because you already pivoted.
No, it's not pivot.
Let's slow down.
And you can see that you said he's timeless.
I didn't concede. I think I gave a very clear answer that didn't lead to any logical contradictions.
You acknowledged it was a fallacious argument because you said he exists in time, but then he doesn't exist in time.
No, I said God, like in his essence, is atemporal, but his actions can be observed temporally.
His actions would be a
bro, please, why do you keep interrupting me when I'm middle?
His actions would be a following of his nature. So if you're saying his actions exist in time,
God can actualize change external to himself without changing himself. Wait, it would actually logically follow. A-Train, please, A-Train, don't interrupt me. A-Train, please let me finish. Please let me finish, okay? The fact that God can actualize change external to himself without changing himself, which would lead to compositional parts within God, if change does exist within the essence of God, actually, if anything, points me towards that the thing behind the universe is necessary, unmoved move of this cause, it would logically follow that it has to be a mind, because the only thing that can actualize change and do actions external to itself without changing itself and changing its very being or nature would be a mind.
Listen, you're not understanding. Again, if you're saying he's making change requires time by definition. Without time, there can be no change, because change requires a time in which there was no change and then there was change. So you claiming he's timeless or atemporal, you're trying to, mishmash it, and you're confusing yourself, because simply it's a contradiction, okay? You're saying it requires time, and then, it's atemporal. It's it's nonsense. I don't know why
I actually don't think it's nonsense. I see no logical. I see no logical contradiction.
Doesn't exist in the universe. Affect the universe, then it would have to act the universe to affect the universe. So that's exist in some physical sense. If you're saying he's not physical, how can he make a physical change? Everything that makes a physical change by nature has to be physical and natural.
No, I disagree. The fact that the immaterial can interact with the material would indicate this immaterial being is omnipotent. Actually, it would actually point me towards all power.
Something interacting with the material by definition would have to be material, because the
I
material
disagree.
affected by immaterial by nature. Something material can only be affected by other material things. Something immaterial cannot affect the material because it's not material. It doesn't.
If anything, this would actually lead me to the conclusion that this immaterial mind is omnipotent. If anything, that would lead me to that conclusion even more.
Cannot exist. It's immaterial. There's nothing there by definition.
Immaterial doesn't mean nothing. Wait, are metaphysical concepts immaterial?
Oh my goodness!
And they exist. You're conflating existence and something being immaterial.
Basically, they're neurons in our mind. That's it. So they would be physical. They're neurons in our mind.
It doesn't logically follow that just because something's immaterial, it doesn't exist.
Can you name me one? Can you name me one thing that? Wait, you said something's immaterial. That means it doesn't exist. Can you name me an immaterial thing that exists? Can you name me an immaterial thing that exists?
Yeah, sure. The laws of logic, mathematical concepts.
Mathematical concepts and laws of logic are still based on material. That's what you're not understanding.
No, well, you're presupposing the mind is material. First of all,
I don't know. I thought the brain was an actual physical substance, and neurons.
I think the brain. Yeah. So the problem is, and I think you pivoted pretty hard away from it. You did say that these concepts require a mind in order to exist. But then you said that the concepts would still exist without human minds. I'm confused how and why these concepts would still exist if you took away humans.
Doing things. There's a difference between, the universe and laws of logic, you're misconstruing them. So when you say exist and non-exist, you're talking about something completely different. Laws of logic again are describing something completely different, physical compared to the metaphysical. They're describing the universe. They're not actually the universe, and you're misconstruing it.
So once more, could the universe exist and not exist at the same time?
Based on the laws of logic, no. That's
Okay, so take away human minds. Would it be logically possible for the universe to exist and not exist at the same time?
so you're saying take away human
Yeah,
mind.
get rid of all human minds. Could
From the
the
mind of
universe?
a human. You can only approach this from the human mind, number one. But number two, again, based on the laws of logic, as I've already stated, from what we know, no. I've already stated that. And if we're going round in circles, we've been on this topic for so long because you're trying to run away
I'm not
from
trying to run
from a
away.
people that destroys your entire God.
I don't think
How many
anything
other times do I need
destroys.
to answer this? How many more times?
Well, I only have like 3%, and I'm using my earphones that are wired, so I mean I can't even stay for
God
long.
damn,
But
bro. Charge your phone, man. Charge your phone. God damn, he's running away, man.
I'm not running away. I'm just letting you know that I am going to try and stop, as long as possible. But you did make the claim that
Let's do the problem of evil, man. Please, I really want to do this run you. We can come back to this. I don't mind, but we've been going round and round. But please, problem of evil, because I know you don't want to do it.
I have no problem defending the problem of evil. I think
Alrighty,
it's
let's go.
I think it's just clarify. Would you be running the logical problem of evil or the evidential problem of evil?
We could say it'll be a mixture of both,
Uh,
but
okay.
basically, evidence basically gets logical, if you know what I mean. But regardless, let's just do it. You believe evil exists? In fact, how do you define evil? Number one, you've got to define the terms. Number one.
I don't think like evil like it's like an ontological item. Like I think it's just the privation of goodness, in the same way that blindness is just the privation of sight.
Okay, so
That's how I
what
would
would
define
be
evil.
if I unalive someone else,
Hmm.
like with a weapon, unalive someone else, would that be evil? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, depends depends on the context. Was it self defense?
No, as in like I was angry with them, and such as the Ten Commandments say, I unalive them because I didn't like them.
I would
Again,
say
so
that would be evil to do. Yeah.
okay, so that would be an evil thing to do. So effectively, what you're saying is that. So again, the thing is, even your Bible, by nature, your God says that evil exists. God acknowledges evil in the world, and so I mean, even if we can go off evil as maybe saying something that's against God, would that be a fair way of saying it? Something that's against God would be evil by
I
nature.
would
If
say
it's by nature of good, you'd have to come to the conclusion that something that's against God would by nature have to be evil.
yeah.
So
I'd say it's a privation of God, which is directly a refusal to, I guess, follow God's way. I would say God's like a nature. Yeah, sure.
sure, okay. Would you say that there exists evil in the world? That evil in the world exists,
What do you mean by exists?
as in there is evil in the world.
I think there is the privation of good in the world. Yeah, evil exists. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so again, you're trying to use this argument of it's a privation of good. Evil acts do exist. Evil does exist. It's when you're saying absence of good. You're just again. I don't think it works as a succinct definition, even based on the Bible. If you do an internal critique of the Bible, it still wouldn't necessarily work. We know that good could necessarily be, anything that I'd say would be against God if we're going the theistic definition. And since it's an internal critique, I think that'll make more sense. But regardless, we'll see with this privation of good how you go with it. But the point is this: is so you said there's evil in the world. Why is there evil in the world then?
Why is there evil in the world? Yeah, I think that God allows a privation of himself. One, because he wanted to allow beings to have like free like agency to choose him, the privation of him, or to choose to like share in his like essence and love, and kind of coexist with this goodness and love. And second of all, I think God allows some evils to, because his act of defeating evil and overcoming evil, the triumph over evil itself is a good thing. Therefore, evil existing and being destroyed is more good. It's a maximal amount of goodness being achieved over evil never existing in the first place.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying is the Holocaust was good because God was going to have a better good to overcome the Holocaust. Okay, very
Um,
good.
wait, I don't think that like if I was to ask you, like for example, let's say you were like outside of space and time. Let's just say, and you knew that if you allowed the Holocaust, it would stop. I don't know, 100 million people dying in a similar way. But this is the only way you could do this without impeding on free agency. Would you have allowed for the Holocaust, or would you have allowed the 100 million people to die?
See, this argument doesn't even work because, again, this leads into the logical question that defeats every single thing that you're saying is that could God have made a world in which we always did good with our free will?
Then I don't think that would be free will.
Okay, so does God have free will?
Does God have free will?
Yes.
Well, free will would mean free will in terms of the ability to choose evil. He can't choose a privation of himself.
Okay, so God is determined by something else. He doesn't have free agency. He
No,
doesn't.
I would say yeah. I would say God has free agency. I just don't want to get too like lumped in on how we're defining these terms. But I would say yeah, God has free agency. Sure, yeah.
Okay, so again, if he doesn't have free agency, then he would basically be determined, and he basically wouldn't be
Yeah,
omnipotent.
I don't think God is determined. No, but I mean,
Okay,
like I think God is like, I mean, like I think God like always. I don't think God ever contradicts himself. If you want to say that's like a restriction against his freedom, well then sure, I guess we restrict God with contradictions. I guess,
no, I mean,
but
again, God would be able to. And again, this is the issue when you're kind of defining evil, I guess, the wrong sort of way. Because again, when I'm saying evil is doing an act against God, that's an evil act, not necessarily a privation of good. I think that's a kind of like a bad definition. Because like I'd see an evil act like unaliving someone, not necessarily a privation of good, but as a
I would say unaliving somebody is a privation of God and God's law itself. So yeah, I don't.
okay. Well, again, that's where one's difficult. But the point is that there's a logical world in which we always did good with our free will, right?
We
Since
always did.
it's not impossible, it's not contradictory to choose to do good with your free will, right?
I don't think it's a contradiction. I just believe that would be like it kind of reminds me of imagine we had two situations, and we had a wife who was married to like this really powerful king, and she was extremely happy. She was always happy. The way that she got to this conclusion was by the king tying her hands, and she could never choose to leave the palace and to choose a privation of the king. Now, she was extremely happy, but that was the circumstances set up. The second one is the wife to the king goes through quite a bit of suffering, there's some hardships. However, her hands are not tied and she can leave the palace at any moment. The second situation, in my opinion, kind of represents our reality and like the way God chose to create. And the first one seems to represent what you're opting for. Which one to you seems more moral?
Yeah, but the issue is that God could have made a one which, even if our hands weren't tied, we could still do good things. Like, it's not a contradiction that just because we have free will, we guaranteed we'll do bad things. There's always a chance we could always do good. That's not a contradiction. That's not an impossible thing. Is that we could have always done good, and that there's a feasible world in which we always did good. So it's a question of why would you not make the world in which we always do good, since he's omniscient?
Well, then you're just saying there is a world where we can't choose a privation of God,
No,
and
we can choose, but we don't. That's
so
how free will
we
works.
wait
We have the agency to choose or not choose. So there was a
we
world in
can,
which
but we don't. But you're saying, but we don't. That's kind of the way the world's set up now. We can choose to be in God's nature, but some of us don't through our own free agency.
no,
You're saying,
there was a world in which we all did. There's a possible world out of all the possible worlds God could have made that He knew would be the case. There was a world in which He knew it's not impossible that there's a world in which we could have always chosen good, like Jesus. We could have all lived like Jesus, always chosen good. And it even leads to the issue of God making an imperfect thing. How can all good God make an imperfect thing? But regardless, there was a world in which we could always choose good, and yet He didn't choose to create that world. He chose a world in which we didn't always choose good, knowing that we wouldn't always choose good.
when you say choose good, by this, I'm just simply saying like. The problem is, I think me and you are just defining and understanding good and evil so differently that that's why our position, like, it seems so
I don't think
insane.
that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think that you're just jumping to a very big contradiction that kind of like defeats the
I don't
argument.
think there's any logical contradiction with
No, it's
God
it's
creating.
in the omnibenevolent nature of God, and the fact that if He was an all good God, He wouldn't choose a world in which there were bad or there was evil. In fact, there's a world in which we could have always had good, and so why would He not make that world in which we always did good? Since He's
So,
on.
like, I suppose, like, what would be like your kind of like solution? Like, how should God have created? What are you saying would be the more good thing to do? I'm confused.
Out of all the possible worlds He could have made, an omnibenevolent God, if He's omnibenevolent, would choose the world in which there's always good. Even if we go off your definition of good, He would have chose the world in which we didn't choose a privation of Him. Although, how
But
could we
if we can't choose a privation of him, then I don't see how we're free because we
not
can't
that we
choose a
can't,
privation.
that we don't. is that we can. Just like, this is the issue when
That's the way the world's set up now. We can. And when you say we don't, that would mean there's an external force stopping